Welcome to the Sit Down Zumock podcast. Z-Man coming at you. This week, I am in New York City. You want to come out and see me? I'm at Gotham Comedy Club taping Gotham Live once again, 10 p.m. show. That is Thursday, the 20th. Hit me up if you want tickets for the taping. And the 20th through the 22nd, I will be at Vinnie Brand's Stress Factory in New Brunswick. And if he brings up Ariana Grande, I will walk the fuck out of there. I'm not messing around, Vinny. I am not messing around. And weekend after that, I'm at headlining the Ann Arbor Showcase, the 28th and 29th in Michigan. Please come out to that. I want to thank everyone that signed up for Patreon. Thank you so much. It's growing, and I appreciate it. $3 a month for additional bonus content. And got two more people, Donovan and Ricky the Great just signed up for the $20 holler. Thank you for the donations. As I navigate my way through woke Los Angeles as a white guy named Chad, it is appreciated. But without further ado, let's get to today's guest. A guy I wanted on for a while, a guy I've known for a long time. And the reason why I wanted to get him on, because one, every time I talk to you, it's always a great conversation. Or you just came back from a foreign country. You've also you've managed some of the biggest names in comedy. My big brother in comedy, Jim Florentine. The great Jim Norton, and do you manage Chip Chipperson?
Chip is his own entity. Chip has a, Chip has a whole different representation.
Oh, it's a whole thing.
Yeah,
he's with Gersh.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say
he's with Barry Katz.
Chip is a unique individual. He's pretty annoying, to be honest. So yeah, I do have the pleasure of dealing with Chip. So yeah. And of course, you also forgot Patrice.
I was about to.
Oh,
I was going to say, and of course, the late great Patrice Oneal. I mean, who's just It seems like the further and further we get away from his passing, the more and more stories and great stories and folklore. And you have a million of them yourself. I mean, I'd love to hear some of them throughout the podcast when we get into it.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that today.
Yeah, not today. We're going to talk about stocks.
I'm kidding. No, it's funny. Well, the only thing I was going to say was when you said woke Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And am I talking into this properly? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
When you said woke Los Angeles, the thing is that he right now, if he were alive, I think it would be, it'd be great.
It would be the voice we need.
Yeah.
It would be the perfect voice for what's going on in this industry. And oh man, he would just set it straight. And oh man, how did you come? First of all, I don't really know. I know you're from Chicago. Went to college in New York.
I went to NYU.
What brought you into this business?
So. Okay, it's pretty easy. In a nutshell, I went to NYU. I was there. I was in the film school, which I thought I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment business. I just wasn't 100% sure on what area of it.
Were you in film school right around like the state, like David Wayne and Michael Showalter, because they were all?
They were older than me.
Okay.
But they were there before I was.
Okay.
Like not long before I was.
Because it seemed like everybody went to NYU film school.
Yeah. I was there with. Let's see, who was I there with? Brett Ratner.
Okay. Wow.
I was there with Brett. I was there with a guy named Jesse Alexander, who's a big writer in Hollywood who wrote, on Lost and everything.
Okay.
A very good friend of mine, Nick Quested, who is a big documentary director and producer.
Yeah.
And did tons of music videos. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of people, and some of the people have become agents. Some have become producers. Peter Shore, who's Paulie's brother.
Oh, okay.
We went to college together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked on Pete's student film.
That's cool.
Which was, that was fun. That was actually, I've never told this to Pete, but that honestly was a huge introduction to comedy. Because it was about a comedian. It starred Geddy Watanabe.
Yeah.
And, oh God, who else was in it? Charlie Barnett.
Ooh,
you remember him?
The great comic.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard you talking about him on Earl Skankel's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You guys talked about, he guest starred on Miami Vice.
Yeah.
And
he was an amazing comedian.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, when you do a student film, you're taking it very seriously and you're trying really hard to make it good. And, I think we shot for like 2 weeks or something.
Okay.
And so I got to go with Pete I remember we went to, I want to say, we were looking at spaces to shoot. And because of his comedy connections, we went to this guy's office. I'll never forget his name. His name was H-Y, Einhorn. Hi Einhorn. Very old school, sort of Broadway Danny Rose type.
That sounds like an alias.
Yeah, I mean, but you're talking the old school, like the guy with the cigar, you know.
Yeah.
And it was one of those. It was off Broadway. Even it was not. It was somewhere either on Broadway or just off Broadway in one of the. It might have been the Brill Building even. And you walk in and he had like as big as this wall is here, a huge picture of Alan King. And then I realized, oh, he's like Alan King's manager. I didn't know much about Alan King, to be completely honest. You know, when you're like 20 years old, you're not really.
Where was the photo at?
It was right when you walk in, like to the office, and it was a wall of Alan King.
Really?
But one huge, massive photo of him. And, you know, it was something that you had seen in movies before, but not like, here it is right up close. I'm looking and I'm like, wow. And then Pete, because of his mom and his dad, you know, we were able to go and look at this space.
Right.
And then we also, Henny Youngman was in the film.
Oh, wow.
And so we like.
Henny Youngman. I just listened to Gilbert Gottfried's podcast, and he was talking. He loved Henny Youngman.
Yeah, he was amazing. I mean, when I think about it, I can't believe we shot with all these people, but it was a real introduction to comedy because I remember we also went to Dangerfields.
Okay.
And I remember being down.
By the way, still looks the same.
Yeah, it looks the same. And I remember being down in the basement because Pete, like, you know, again, Pete had this cool entree, so you got to see like glimpses of it. And there was a guy I'll never forget, like clearly like the manager or somebody, and he was talking to, it was a comedian, but I can't remember who. He's like, listen, come out to my house in the Shore. Come out. Yeah. He was, you know, one of these very New York guys.
Yeah.
And I was really attracted to that. It was interesting to see this whole world. You know, it was, but it was something that. But Charlie Barnett, I want to say, Charlie Barnett was the guy that had the most impact on me, I think, because the guy was brilliant. Yeah. But he was also like, I was just fascinated because he was also, you could tell, so, you know, out of his mind.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a mean way. He had problems. He had issues. The first thing, and I think I talked about this on Earl's podcast, was he had these, you know, some kind of ailment, or I don't know what it is exactly, but whereas the ends of his fingertips were all huge.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what disease that is or what it was, but and so that was the first thing you noticed. But then you see how brilliant he was. And we were shooting in Washington Square Park, and in like, you know, he just couldn't sit there and do nothing while you're waiting to set up the cameras. Sure. So he'd just start telling jokes. People would gather around. There'd be a circle because he used to do that all the time.
Yeah,
and
he was a street performer.
Yeah, and so we were there, and Charlie Barnett was performing. I mean, it was really amazing. But then I remember one day he got upset about something, and he just disappeared. And it was like the first glimpse of how, you know, comedians have a very conflicted mind.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, I was like, wait, he just left? Like, we were relying on him. Like, you can't just do that. Like, what do you mean? And Pete understood that way light years ahead of me, having grown up in it. But I just went, the guy just left. Like, how can he do that? Like, he eventually came back. Yeah. And Pete was very good about kind of reworking things around his absence, and, you know, had to change the story and stuff. But it was like that was the first glimpse of it. Right. And then after that, not long after that, actually, I got a job working on a movie with. It was a terrible film.
What was the movie?
Oh God, it's really, really bad.
Oh, I gotta hear it.
It's called The Hard Way.
Oh, The Hard Way. Let's IMDb this.
I just tell you, it's Michael J. Fox and James Woods. And
was it Family Ties, Michael J. Fox, or was it Teen Wolf era?
No, after that, I think.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely after that.
Okay.
Before, you know, he came out with his illness
Parkinson?
and everything. But it was just, it's like kind of, and
you said James Woods was in it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Looks like that would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, the plot line is a Hollywood actor decides to get to go on essentially like a long ride along, if you will.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
With James Woods, who's a cop. But it's filled with every single cliche you can imagine.
Every cop cliche?
Everything, yeah.
Was it a comedy?
Yeah.
Oh,
but I'm conflicted saying that because the guy who directed it, I have tremendous admiration for, because he was like my first boss, and he was very
John Badham?
Yeah, John Badham's a great director. I mean, for real. John Badham directed Saturday Night Fever.
Did he really?
Yeah. He directed War Games. He directed a movie
Holy
called
shit.
A very underrated movie called Blue Thunder.
Blue Thunder with Roy Schreider.
Yeah. No, Badham is a phenomenal director. I mean,
Short Circuit.
yeah, he did a ton. I mean, John was in his day, John was a huge director.
Dracula in 1979.
Yeah. And so he was very good to me, and he helped him. I got a job. They offered me a job to come work for them in L.A.
Hey, The Hard Way made $65 million in the box office, just for the record.
But what did it cost?
Let's
That's
see.
the question.
The budget was $24 million, so they turned profit.
Really?
This is according to my research.
Yeah. Maybe it did. I'm not sure. It was an expensive movie to make.
Penny Marshall was in it, too.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's great.
I remember the day we shot with her. That was in the Jersey Shore where they shot that scene. But that movie, I learned a lot on that movie, and I got a job working for these guys. He was partners with a guy called Rob Cohen. Now, if you look him up, a guy who directed that movie Dragon. I was there when they developed that movie. This was like, here I come to L.A.
Yeah.
And I had other friends from college who came out to L.A. So it wasn't that I didn't know anybody here, but, you're out here. And I was very, very lucky. I had a job at a company that was based on the Universal lot. We had, and in those days, those were the days of like, they don't give deals like this anymore.
Right, the 90s.
I mean,
huge movies.
This was like, we had 2 bungalows. We had a golf cart. I would drive around. I mean, I learned that whole lot by golf cart, by driving around. I mean, it was just, I had to run errands and do all sorts of stuff, but I learned a lot, and just we were developing movies, we were doing all sorts of stuff, and so.
Before we go further,
Yeah.
let's get back to Blue Thunder. Better attack helicopter, Airwolf or Blue Thunder?
Blue Thunder.
Okay, fair
100%.
enough.
Blue Thunder has whisper mode, and Blue Thunder also has Daniel Stern in it.
That's
who,
true. But Jan Michael Vincent had Ernest Borgnine.
I'm sorry, I love Ernest Borgnine, but there's no way you can tell me. I mean, I'll tell you a good story. You'll appreciate this. Blue Thunder is such a good movie. It's such an underrated film.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the stories.
Forgot whisper mode.
Whisper mode.
So they can see the good girl changing.
Yeah, it's like, so according to John Badham, because I'll never forget, he told me this story. I was enamored with Stanley, still am, I suppose, with Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
And John one day told us a story about how after Blue Thunder came out, he got a call. They said, Stanley Kubrick would like to speak with you. And I guess Kubrick was preparing, what was the film? Was it the one in, was it Full Metal Jacket?
It was probably right around the same time.
No,
yeah.
wait, yeah, it must have been. Because he was and he was very interested in the helicopter stuff, John did. And
really?
John said they talked for hours about it. He wanted to know everything, how they shot it, how they, the gimbal, the camera was on, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And think about it, in those days, they didn't have drones. So they had to do a lot of stuff with helicopters. They had to do, live.
It was all helicopter stunts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyway, just to say one thing, I would, because I know I kind of didn't talk nicely about The Hard Way, but I have tremendous respect for John Badham. Because, I mean, if you look at Saturday Night Fever, War Games. I mean, War Games is a really good movie.
Yeah, it's even though it's like the technology's dated, it's still solid.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Matthew Broderick and
the characters, everything. You
Yeah.
know, so anyway, I'm sorry. We could talk more about Blue Thunder.
No, I just wanted to throw that out there. I didn't know you had a story behind it, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never knew that. Now I
Yeah.
know. But you're going back to when you were working on the
Oh,
Hard Way. You came out here. You moved out here. Thank you.
Oh, cold water.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
So, anyway, so after that, after working for those guys, we did another movie. Well, so John and Rob Cohen was the other guy who went on to do that movie, the Bruce Lee movie, and then later did a whole bunch of other films.
Yeah.
I think Rob directed, did he direct the first Fast and the Furious? I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did.
Rob Cohen.
Let's see. Did he?
We're about to find out real quick. Rob Cohen. There he is. Oh, he's 70 years old.
Yeah.
He directed Dragon, Mummy,
Yeah.
Stealth. What else you got here?
Oh,
Tom?
yeah. Maybe he didn't do Fast and Furious.
I don't know if he did Fast and Furious.
I thought for a second maybe he had, but that's all right. But anyway, an interesting story about Rob Rob was a
He directed 3 episodes of Miami Vice.
yeah.
ahead.
And believe me, one of my favorite. I think he directed one of the ones that I loved, Evan.
He did direct Fast and Furious.
He did.
2001, and
Yep.
then Triple X right after that.
Yep. He did direct Fast.
And Evan.
Evan was the one, the Miami Vice episode that I loved. It was one of the ones that I loved. You know,
Yeah,
Rob.
1985, Evan.
Rob had a very interesting story.
You listening, Earl? Miami Vice talk.
One of the cool stories about Rob had a unique talent. He was very smart, and his first job was at Universal, I believe. And he was given a script to read and do coverage on. This is like, if I remember the story correctly, he got the script, and it was like the first script they gave him, okay?
Yeah.
So just to give you some understanding, like, most of the time people in those jobs will never recommend something. Because that's a big deal to recommend.
Right.
Like, you just don't do that. Like, so even if it's really good, you'll be like, consider. You know, there was different levels. There was like pass,
Right.
Consider, strong consider, and then recommend. You know, like recommend being something that you, and the script that the first script that he got was The Sting.
Oh.
And was it written by George Roy Hill? I know it was directed by George Roy Hill. I don't remember who wrote it. But he read it and literally wrote the most glowing coverage of this movie with, like, strong recommend.
Really?
Okay? Yeah, like something nobody does. And, you know, that, like, essentially, you know, made him. I mean, like, he got a job he was hired as an executive after that.
Well, the movie, I mean, was phenomenal. It was written by David S. Ward.
David Ward, that's right. David S. Ward. Yep. Yeah. Directed by George Roy Hill, though.
Yes.
Yeah. But he you know, wrote this glowing coverage about it, and they were like, "Huh? Like, who writes this the first time they, you know?"
Yeah.
It's either, if you do that, you're either like, "This guy sucks, get rid of him," or like, "Whoa," and he got promoted right after that.
Well, I mean, it was a good movie.
It's The Sting. It's an incredible film, and it holds up really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were just hanging around in the 90s in the Universal lot, and
So anyway, Rob and John, their partnership ended, and I went to work with John Badham, and we did another film. The one after that was a film that was a remake of a French film called La Femme Nikita. The remake was called Point of No Return. With Bridget,
I remember that movie.
Yeah, Bridget Fonda.
Yes, I remember Point of No Return.
Yeah. Gabriel Byrne is in it. Dermot Mulroney. And who was Mel Brooks' wife? Anne Bancroft? Yeah, she's in it. It was a really good cast.
Now, Bridget Fonda's an actress you don't hear much.
She's a great actress, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's too bad. I think she's just a terrific actress. What happened? Where has she been?
That's exactly what I was going with. I was like, last time I saw her was in the Tarantino film.
Yeah,
and that was
Jackie Brown.
Yeah, Jackie Brown.
She played the surfer girl.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's smoking weed
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, I had a good cast. Harvey Keitel,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gabriel Byrne.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then after that, after that movie, and for that, I mean, I was lucky in the sense that because we went from the Universal lot to the Warner Brothers lot, and we were that's where our offices were, and then from the Warner Brothers lot, we went to the Disney lot because Disney wanted John and the other producers of the original Stakeout to do a sequel to it.
Oh, okay.
And that was with Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss.
I remember Stakeout.
Yeah, and so we
Emilio
made,
Estevez had a mustache in it.
yes, and so after that, so we made that movie, and during the course of filming, I became really good friends with Emilio Estevez, and
Yeah, you told me you were friends with him, which is a
Yeah.
weird friendship.
you know,
Like, it just, whatever.
well, I mean, I suppose it seems random because he's not known in like the comedy world, I guess, or as a comedian.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess it could be seen random. But Emilio and I became really good
It's
friends.
like if I was friends with C. Thomas Howell. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I guess it'd be weird. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem weird to me, but yeah. But we became friends, and at the end of the film, at the end of shooting, Emilio came to me with this amazing opportunity. He said, "Do you want to come work with me? I'm going to have this company. Disney is making a deal with me, and do you want to come work with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't think I knew what to do.
Yeah. You're almost like the Forrest Gump of entertainment.
No, I don't want to think that. I hope not. But I suppose that couldn't be too bad. But
Like you're just involved. You're in everywhere. You've met everybody.
But from that, Emilio and we had a company at Disney for 4 years, and we made a couple of movies. One of the movies is funny. I've never really talked about this.
Men at Work.
No, that was earlier. That was way before me.
Oh.
But one of the films though that I remember, like, this is like, I think I might have started in like September.
Yeah.
I don't remember what year, but like we'll call it September. And like at the end of September, I said, "Hey, you got to hear this. This is this tape that I got that a friend of mine had, and it was the Jerky Boys."
Oh.
And so Emilio, like, and I we couldn't stop playing it. Like,
Yeah.
we love this stuff. And we ended up, I went to New York and I met with the guy whose label, I think it was called Select Records.
And if you don't know who the Jerky Boys are, Google them. They were like the original
yeah.
prank phone callers.
If your audience doesn't know what the Jerky Boys are, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they were the godfathers of prank phone calling. No disrespect, Jim Florentine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like to think Florentine was doing it before, actually.
Yeah.
Or probably before, but I don't know if he had recorded it and had, a whole thing. But
The Jerky Boys were like Run DMC, and Florentine's like the Beastie Boys. Like they're all iconic, but one came first and one got bigger. And
sorry, I'm texting my mother something. Sorry, my apologies. That's unprofessional.
It's fine. That's why it's a podcast.
Yeah. Anyway,
cut that part out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm joking.
No, but so that movie, then Emilio and
Oh, it was the Jerky Boys movie.
Well, here's what happened.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and if you'll notice, Emilio's a producer on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So we brought that movie to, I think it was Joe Roth. Or I'm trying to remember what happened. We brought it to Disney. We took it to Disney, and at the same time, a friend of mine named John Glickman, who now is the president of MGM.
Yeah.
At the time was working with Joe Roth, who was a big producer, had a very big deal, and Joe wanted to do it. So somehow or another, it kind of came together, and Emilio, his name is, I think his name is on. If you look it up, I'm pretty sure his name is on that movie, and so yeah, so we got that movie. That was the first thing that we ever, like literally, like the very first thing that I helped. I want to say helped get made.
Right.
In some small way.
Was it?
Is his name on there?
Produced by John Roth. Nope. And Roger Burnham.
Executive producer?
Executive producer. Okay. Let me find executive.
Joe Roth, Roger Birnbaum, probably Johnathan Glickman's name is on there, but I think Emilio's name might be on there. I believe it is.
Now I gotta know. I'm not seeing Emilio right now, but
really,
I'm not a very good fact checker. I'm doing my best here. Made $7 million at the box office.
Let's see here. I think he did, but
I mean, I'll take your word for it.
no, I know. I'm just
Somebody's listening in their car right now, like, yes, he is. You idiot. Move on.
yeah, I know, right?
Come on.
Let's see here. Well, there's no internet here, so.
I got it.
Yep, Tony Danza and Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I can't remember how Tony Danza got involved. Yeah, look at this. Executive producers, Tony Danza and Emilio Estevez.
Point Johnathan. Okay.
Anyway, so that movie, anyway, that was like the first. But then, there was other things we developed. There's a movie that Emilio wanted to make based on a James Duff play that called The War at Home. We did that. We did a bunch of things. And then after that, now this is where comedy comes into play. After that, I got recruited to work at that, it was 4 years later now. And I had an opportunity to go to this company called MBST, which, and Emilio like, it was, to this day, we're still very, very close.
Yeah.
So it was he was great. I mean, he thought it was, time for me to do more things. And
It's
so,
time for you to blossom, young man.
yeah. And so he was, with his blessing, I left and went to MBST, which stands for Mora Bresner Steinberg Tenenbaum.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more than just Mora Bresner Steinberg Tenenbaum. There was other people there. There was a guy named Mike Marcus who had come from MGM, who had run MGM, who after his tenure at MGM, he left. He'd worked with those guys, and so he joined the company as a partner, and he was the one who helped bring me in. Him and Larry Bresner, and those guys, if you don't know, MBST was. Well, it started out originally, if you go way, way back in the sort of history of New York comedy, there was a firm called Rollins and Joffe.
Okay.
And if you look at any Woody Allen movie, it says a Rollins-Joffe production. These guys were quite legendary. They managed everyone from Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Woody Allen, Mike Nichols, Elaine May, David Letterman.
Who are these people? Wow.
I mean, the list is pretty prestigious, and Larry Bresner used to tell me some stories about how Larry Bresner and Buddy Mora, who are two sort of legendary guys in the world of comedy, they started out at the company, and then eventually became partners. And it was Larry who discovered Robin. Okay, Buddy and Larry discovered Billy Crystal as well. I think Buddy discovered Letterman.
Oh wow.
I mean, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that office, was quite legendary, and it grew and grew and grew, and part of it came out here, and then another guy named David Steinberg, not the comedian, the manager.
Oh, okay.
Became a partner there, and David really was Robin's manager for just about all of his career.
Now, did you have an interest and love for comedy at that time, or?
Sure, I definitely did.
Yeah.
I loved it. I felt very at home with it because I think, I grew up watching all sorts from Three Stooges to Woody Allen to.
Sure.
I mean, I'll tell you. One of my favorite movies of all time is Risky Business.
Oh, 1983.
Yeah.
Rebecca De Mornay. What's her name?
Rebecca De Mornay, yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Brickman.
Oh, yeah.
Who didn't really direct much after that. He made another movie called, I think, Deal of the Century, and he had a very strange career, actually. But I think I had met him once or twice, because at our old company we were doing a project with him, and I had the honor of meeting him, and it's I think he made the movie so good that it's really hard to top it.
Yeah.
That I think
from the soundtrack to
everything.
Yeah.
Just Roger Ebert said something about that movie, which is, he said, this isn't just a movie about a teenage sex comedy. This is a movie about something, and it's on the same level as The Graduate.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
It has everything in it, and the timing. Think about a movie that deals with teenage sex this way.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And if there is, they've tried copying it.
Yeah.
I just think it's a brilliant film, and so
Cruise was banging everybody. Her, Leah Thompson, and all the right moves. I mean,
was he
in the movies? I'm just saying.
He
had a good run.
I'll tell you a story. Emilio told me this years ago. Him and Cruise were sharing an apartment, I guess, in West Hollywood somewhere, and they were young. They were trying to get auditions. They were going out on auditions all the time, and they both went on the audition for Risky Business together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a good little trivia nugget.
Yeah.
I like that stuff.
Yeah. I think, if I remember it correctly, I think they went together, or there was one after another, but and then Cruise got it, and that movie is a very, very special film. I don't. Can you think of a comedy that's as good? Oh, no, that's a bad question.
Yeah.
Can you think of one in the same genre, like teenage sex? Can you think of one that's
a teenage sex comedy?
Yeah.
Nah, not off the top of my head, as I think. trying to think of some of those John Hughes films, but they're not necessarily sex oriented.
Those are great movies too, and and that had an influence on me because I also growing up in Chicago.
Oh, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, you know.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
That movie's just to this
But,
day.
you know, it's funny. Like,
I had Alan Ruck on the podcast.
oh, you did?
Yeah,
That's great.
and he played Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he was telling me all these great behind the scenes stories.
Wow.
Sign up to the Patreon. Listen.
Yeah.
So you're at the office now.
Well, wait, I was just gonna say one thing. You know, on the John Hughes note, the interesting thing is, I don't talk about this very often, but for many, many, many years, I managed Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, and so, you know, like I became familiar with that world.
See, you're Forrest Gump.
No.
Now you're John Hughes.
But you know, I will tell you one thing that's pretty cool. I went. This is a long time ago. Maybe I told Earl this. I don't know if I did or I didn't.
Yeah.
But I went to a dinner right before the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah.
They were giving the award, like I don't know, it was some kind of like Hall of Fame award or something like that, to the you know, to the Brat Pack, to the cast of The Breakfast Club. And
So it's Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson,
Judd Nelson,
Ali Sheedy,
Sheedy, and Emilio.
and Emilio.
But they weren't. But here's the thing: Emilio couldn't be there, but it was Ali's manager. I'm sorry, Molly's manager, Jason Weinberg, called me and he said, "Hey, we should let's organize like a dinner because these guys haven't been together in a while. Let's just." So we said, "Sure." So he organized this dinner, and we all went, and it was just Jason and I and Molly
You're a fly on the
Ringwald,
wall.
Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, and Ali Sheedy at this dinner, and I took photos of it. I actually have.
Well, you take photos of everything.
No, I mean but, you know, I thought about it at the time. I thought I should take some pictures.
Yeah,
and
of
I
course.
did.
You should blow those out and put on the wall. That's an iconic cast right there.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was, you know, in the moment, though, it was sort of very normal. Like, everybody felt like nobody was like, I haven't seen you.
Yeah.
You know, over the years, I think they've all seen each other. I just think it was one of those things where they, you know, I mean, it's a weird thing because if you do something that has kind of transcended all time, you know, it's a movie that is for lack of a better word, an important film.
Yeah.
And it's one that every generation is going to discover, I guess. And as a result of it, you know, for the rest of their life, no matter what they do, what they achieve, they're still going to be associated with this. So it's an, you know.
Well, Anthony Michael Hall, he had Weird Science, which was a cult favorite, and then the other Molly Ringwald movie. 16 Candles.
Yeah,
he was killing it.
Yeah. I mean,
and of course Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Mike was on Saturday Night Live. But what had happened, you know, they did this. So I think when they see each other, it's this familiarity, and it's, you know, it's all good. I don't think they're sitting there reveling in this thing, but
Yeah, remember that scene we filmed?
yeah, no, but I have had the opportunity to be around them. They did another thing where they got together for the Film Center at Film Society at Lincoln Center, honored John Hughes, and so they had a bunch of the cast, and they had John's two sons who were there, and they're really great guys. They're terrific.
Had you met John Hughes before?
No, never.
Oh wow.
No. But you know, I didn't meet him, but this is again one of those weird stories. Because I grew up in Chicago, and I grew up right in the city. And when they were filming Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
were you around when they filming that?
One of the scenes, yeah.
What scene?
The parade.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's the legendary.
Yeah, because my father's office was not far from there, and we left school and we went down, and you know, it was cool. It was.
Did you see Matthew Broderick singing "Shake It Up, Baby" on the float?
No, You want to say I did. It would sound great if I said that, but no, I didn't.
Because, well, why?
Well, you know,
that's what I do.
The thing is, it's one of the first things you learn on movie making, which is like, it takes forever to get a shot, set it up, and so, you know, after like an hour of sitting there, you're like, all right, you know, what's going to happen here? And but I you know, from everything I know of this guy, of John Hughes, he was an amazing guy. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, really prolific though. I mean, he started out Harvard Lampoon. He, you know, I don't need to tell you what he did, but it's I've talked to his wife about it. I've talked to his sons about it, and it's cool. Like, I mean, they understand. You know that he had. I mean, P.J. O'Rourke, who's a writer that I really like. You know, started writing with him at, you know, like I think was it On Vacation, I guess. I mean, and that's another movie, Anthony Michael Hall's in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The connection, the John Hughes connection, though, being, of course. But yeah, so it was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how do you get from all this crazy shit to Florentine?
Because it was only up from there. You know, you want to know something? I'll tell you how I signed Jim Florentine. I remember
Before you get in the gym, like, how did you get? So you got that job? I want to.
Oh, I was there at MBST, and I started out. I was brought over to do development.
Yeah.
You know, like to basically help develop movies. And when I was there, the one thing I realized was show business had changed quite a bit from the moment I got into it to that moment. And I think what I saw happening was, in order to be to make movies, to make projects,
Yeah.
you either had to be a really big producer, you know, like a Jerry Bruckheimer or somebody,
Yeah.
or you had to have something that gave you a chip in the game, you know, that gave you some skin in the game, so to speak. So, you know, the reason people to return your phone calls. And what I saw was, you know, like these guys, I mean, like Larry and David and Buddy, you know, and Steve Tenenbaum, they had, you know, these big clients. So everybody's returning their phone calls. And so I saw that and I thought, this is the thing. And I started out working with directors.
Managing directors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That, I think, it's funny. Now a lot of directors have managers, but at that time, it was something that was starting to happen. It wasn't something that had been a common thing, but it was starting to happen. And there's a guy who, to this day, I still work with, who I adore, a guy named David McNally, who is a commercial director, a brilliant commercial director from Toronto. And David did this Super Bowl commercial for Budweiser that I saw, and I thought, this is so funny. And I reached out to him, and I was like, hey, you should be doing this. And it's very funny because I was super persistent with him. And then, like, 3 weeks after, he's like, okay, you know, fine, we'll work together.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks after, Jerry Bruckheimer got in touch with him.
Really?
And said, I really like your stuff. I think I have a movie for you. And that movie was Coyote Ugly. And so
he directed that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And anyway, I mean, but yeah, that the director's thing came first, and then slowly got into the talent and then comedians.
Okay. So who's the first guy you signed? Who's the guy
The first
guy?
comedian, you mean?
Yeah.
There was a comedian, a young, a very funny guy. He was more of a comedic actor than he was a comedian per se. This guy named Reggie Gaskins. He was very funny.
Not familiar.
No, I mean, I'm trying to remember what he was in that we saw. He did something that I saw that I thought was really funny, and then I said, you know, this guy has something, and then we sent him to some casting directors. He got cast in a few things, and he started to get stuff, and you know, but he was more of an actor. He wasn't so much of a stand-up per se.
I just pull him up. He's from Philadelphia.
Is there?
Is this the same Reggie
Let me see.
Gaskins? Here, this guy right here. Oh. I'll let you.
Let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks like him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's Reggie. Reggie's a good dude, but so you know, I'm trying to think who else. I guess the first big comedian that I signed was Jeff Ross.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jeff Lipschultz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I love Jeff, and we're still very good friends. And
You talk about a guy who is running shit, Jeff
Oh,
Ross.
yeah.
This guy, I mean, he runs Hollywood. Think about it.
Jeff is like, you know what he's like? He's like one of those guys that is like, I was going to make a comparison to an animal, and I can't remember the name of the animal. It's one of those animals that you think is just sitting there, like, chilling out, acting all that, but you don't realize what this guy's doing, like, holy shit. And Jeff's like that. He's incredibly driven and smart, and at the time, he's like, I remember, it was just right after I signed him, he said, I'm going to go to Iraq. And I said, dude, you got to film this thing.
Oh, Jeff. Yeah, I remember that documentary.
Yeah, Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act.
And I said, you need to go to Iraq. Like you need to go with a camera and stuff. And just like, for real, you think so? I'm like, yeah. And then he like, within like a day, he called me the next day. He goes, absolutely. Like, I'm doing it. And then, it was sort of transformative because he came back and he had this like incredible footage. And first of all, it was insane where he went, all these places. I mean, and their hotel was bombed when they were there.
Yeah.
And so
I think I watched it on Showtime, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It was just, but he was there with, I think it was Kyle Dunnigan, Blake, what's Blake's last name? Very funny comedian. Blake, oh man, you'd know him if you saw him.
Blake Griffin?
No.
He did stand up for a second with Neil Brennan.
No, it was Blake. He was on that TV show. Oh man, I can't think of his name right now.
That's all right.
Anyway, but that was that was amazing. That was
just give you an idea. How, I remember when that came out because I had opened for Jeff a few times. And I remember that film coming out. And during that time, he also wrote a book, and then he recorded a special in Jersey. Yeah. It was like all at the same time. I go, and I've got
he also got on. There was TV shows. There was, he obviously because of his relationship with Jimmy Kimmel and stuff like that. But there was I'll tell you two stories. There was one. I don't know if I ever told you this. There was a benefit for the ACLU.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ACLU? And Jeff was there. I think I told you this, where the lady was like, I can't remember her name, but she's like the head of like the ACLU.
Sure.
And she's talking about, what we have to do to fight the freedom of speech always and this and protect the, and then Jeff yelled out, "Show us your cunt." and like the place exploded in laughter. It was like a moment of silence, and then it just exploded.
Oh yeah.
And then she was like something like, "Well, yeah, exactly." So he can say those kind of things. I mean, it was Jeff had this timing that
he still does.
I don't mean to say it like he's gone. He absolutely.
We were just on top of that. We were at Brody Stevens Memorial. And I don't know, did you attend that, or were you there?
Not the one
at the store.
Yeah.
So they did two like an intermission, but in the beginning, all of Brody's like high school friends, college, or teammates, they all came up and they were telling these long stories about Brody, and people were crying, and then it was a sad, and one guy was going on and on and on, and then finally Jeff Ross comes and goes, "Man, after hearing all of Brody's family and friends tell these stories, no wonder why he killed himself."
See,
and the place just blew up.
Jeff's timing is amazing that way, and he's. I remember at the time. Remember Hurricane Katrina?
Never heard of it.
Okay. That was a dumb question. Yeah, remember Hurricane Katrina? I should be fucking executed for that.
I wish Chip heard that.
Yeah. When Hurricane Katrina, Jeff, one of the things when he came back from Iraq, he really got involved with the USO, and which is a really great organization, and they love Jeff. And it's funny because, they're still like a government organization, and here's Jeff who sometimes can be, can make some, and he had them cracked up, and they asked him to go and help with do some stuff with Hurricane Katrina, and I remember he came back, and it was there was some benefit that he had been asked to perform on for, or no, I don't remember what it was now. It was not a benefit. It was this kind of dinner or something honoring Jeff Zucker, at the time the chairman of NBC.
Yeah.
And so the first thing Jeff gets up and he says like, "I just came back. I was with the troops that are helping in Hurricane Katrina." wasn't that bad. And, you know, of course, my timing is not as good as his.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
just, he killed, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and then I remember he made, you know, and then he went on to kind of roast.
Everything?
No,
He
Jeff
went-
Zucker.
Oh.
And at one point, you know, I think he said, what do you, he looked over because Zucker was on the stage. I think he said, what are you going to do? Cancel me? Yeah, cancel my show in Nyack. Call the Holiday Inn. Like, you know, it just, he crushed it.
Oh, yeah,
After
yeah.
that, he got a deal. He got offered a deal from NBC after that. You know, but yeah, he's, you know.
He's still getting off. He's on Netflix. Jeff Ross is on everywhere. I mean, I'm happy for him. He's always been very nice to me. So,
He's the best. And, you know.
so when
and-
you
and-
when you get the Double J Ranch on board, Jim Norton and Jim Florentine.
Well, Norton, I went and saw at at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia.
This during the O&A stir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He was opening for Dice. And,
Okay.
I was blown away. It was, I mean, it was like a force of nature.
Yeah.
And then Florentine, not too long afterwards. I had been a big Stern fan, and so when I started hearing Terrorizing Telemarketers, for me it was like, this guy has something that is so funny because I mean, if you know, going back to some of the movies that I love movies where the people are playing it straight, and Jim Florentine is somebody who
Yeah.
plays comedy straight so well.
Yeah.
I think, you know, better than so many others, and it's remarkable. I mean, and so I kept trying to reach out to him, and I can't remember. Eventually, got in touch with him, and we got on very well. I went with him recently. I don't know. I guess I could tell this story. No, it's okay. He was, as a lot of people know, they're doing Crank Yankers again.
Yeah.
And Jim is on it, and it's very cool. Like, I mean, that was probably one of the. It's weird, but it might have been one of the best days in show business ever.
Because you've come full circle in a weird
No,
way?
no. I'm not looking for some special meaning. Simply because I sat there for.
I thought it was special.
Yeah, no. Because I sat there for the entire morning doing something and getting. I mean, I didn't make them, but I was as they were doing them, as they were recording prank phone calls.
Yeah.
And that I am, you know, I love that stuff. I really am.
You're watching the master at work.
But it was so fun. It was like the time's like flying by because you're just like, oh my God, do another one, call this guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I have that kind of mentality. Like as a little kid, I used to do that. And I think, you know, anybody who has that kind of personality where it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm silly, I'm goofy, I do, you know, stupid shit. And so when you're sitting there and listening to the like you said, the master do it, it was like, and I mean. The whole
And he never breaks
room.
character.
No.
Yeah, he's. I mean, there's a sketch online. I'll put it on the Patreon, but it's Jim's he's a therapist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's.
Oh, yeah.
And and it's just we improv that whole scene, and we were the first ones to do it, and I broke character like 9 times, and Jim never cracked a smile.
Your fans, if they're not familiar with the pepper grinder from Meet the Creeps,
Jesus.
it's one of the great bits of all time. Truly, I mean,
Is that on YouTube?
I think it is.
You can
I'm sure
definitely
you
pick it up at his website at Terrorizing or Meet the Creeps.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is just I'll set it up. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but he's sitting there at a table at a restaurant in New York with Jim Norton, Club Soda Kenny, who else?
Don Jamieson.
Don
maybe?
Jamieson was there. Oh, yeah, Don Jamieson, and I think one other person. I can't remember who. And Jim asks, he orders some chicken, and they bring it, and he asks the waitress to, can he get some pepper, you know, and she comes over with a pepper grinder that she's like, you know, tell me when, and he's just like, I like a lot of it, and he proceeds to go through, I think it's 7 pepper grinders. Okay.
You're just sitting there.
Literally, and he's like, yeah, I like it. And nobody's breaking character.
Yeah.
You could tell they're just like, you know, at one point, like, it's just.
And she's just
like,
grinding the pepper,
yeah,
and they're all staring.
It's just, you know, I don't want to give away the bit because if you haven't seen it, it's really funny.
Classic. No,
But-
I've seen it a million times. It's very funny. It's very
Yeah.
fun. But going back to, I was a huge Stern fan too, and that's
Yeah.
why, indirectly, why I'm in this right here is because
Yeah.
of Howard Stern. Because I drive to college, and I would listen every morning. I would tape record the shows.
Sure.
So I could listen to them throughout the day on my yellow Walkman. And Artie Lang and Jim and all them, I was just like, they were my idols to me.
Yeah.
And fast forward to 2019, now Jim's my friend.
Yeah.
I've been on the road with Art. Like, it's just so surreal, like how it all came full circle
cool,
for me.
man.
Because they were the guys in the radio.
Yeah.
They were, and now it's very weird because I
You know, it's funny. I mean, we didn't even talk about Patrice, but like, you know,
I love how he teased this whole episode with a Patrice, and time's almost up. We'll save it for the last.
No, I mean, well, yeah, Patrice. What can I say? I mean, we should save it. It's too much.
Save it for a two-parter. We'll do another one.
But I didn't even talk about the podcast, which I should talk about.
Yeah, talk about, you have a podcast.
Well, I did a podcast, so yes, I wanted to start a podcast network kind of endeavor thing that you know.
Yeah, weren't you supposed to be on it?
Well, the thing is this. Everybody said, "Oh, you know, you're gonna do it with comedians," and my instinct was not to, only because, look, all these guys have their own podcasts already. They've been doing it. There's nothing. It's not. I wasn't gonna bring something to that I thought, oh, you know, and I also wanted to kind of take my time with it. I didn't want to, you know, so I wanted to really learn and understand the business about it.
Right.
So we opened these studios, and then where a lot of people would come in and record, and I kind of absorbed a lot from that. And I'd been thinking about it, like, what can I do? And I found this. Originally was just going to do something dumb, which was like, oh, I'm just going to talk to people and interview them. And, you know, and it's stupid. Like, there's enough of those shows. No offense. Yeah. Like, you know.
No, I have no theme. I mix it up all the time.
Right. So, but I was like, I'm fascinated by these stories. I listened to, like, Serial and Crime Town and things like that.
Yeah, they're huge.
And I've been, like, those I really wanted to do something, but I wouldn't know what it was. And then I saw something on a documentary, and I just said, that's the guy right there. I want to talk to him. And the guy, it feels like it's about to take a 180-degree turn here.
Right.
The guy is a guy called John Vasquez. He was Pablo Escobar's chief hitman and assassin for the Medellin cartel. He's personally admitted to killing over 300 people. He's
alive and out there?
Yeah. Well, what had happened, and this is why I was fascinated about it, was he, I mean, one thing that I didn't mention here is, like, in the course of my life here that we've gone back to, which is weird because I'm not that old, one of the things I didn't really talk about here was I really became, so passionate about traveling. It's like a big passion of mine.
Yeah,
I've been to, like,
you've been everywhere.
I'm not everywhere. I've been to probably about 80 countries, and I love it. And so that kind of fueled this passion for this. But anyway, so I basically wanted to know the story of this guy. And why his story is interesting is because he killed all these people, did all this stuff, went to jail. He went to jail for 23 years.
Oh, geez.
And he got out, and very controversial.
Was was his character in Narcos?
No, they made an entire series about him called Surviving Escobar, alias JJ.
Is it on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
Netflix. I'll tell you something about that, which is a sort of a double standard. Actually, I've talked about this in other podcasts, but in a second. But so I went to Medellin, Colombia. I got down there. I set it up ahead of time, but I spent a whole bunch of time with this guy.
Holy shit, you went there?
Yeah, I went there. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
He can't travel here. It's he's a very controversial figure, and but he got out of jail and he became a YouTube star. I forgot. I don't think I said that.
Yeah, you buried the lead on that.
And so he became a YouTube star, and this is what fascinated me, because there's something crazy when we celebrate a guy who's done so much evil.
Yeah.
And you know, and how, like, a society, I think it's dangerous for a society to do that. And I watched this guy. I saw a documentary where he was in the street and signing autographs for people, and so I went down there, and I think, you know,
it's so weird, a murderer signing autographs.
Yeah, I know. It's I mean, well, you know, Narcos did a lot for for that. I mean, Narcos had a lot to do with that. They've lionized these guys, Pablo Escobar and all these other guys, and it's
Netflix in general, like with serial killer documentaries, and it's just like they're like it's the thing to do.
Yeah, it's it's a weird, but
we're all fascinated with it. I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So in doing that, they I was curious about this, so I went down there. I set this whole thing up, and I spent time with him, and I interviewed him. And when I came back, it was originally going to be like a sort of condensed, maybe 4-part, 6-part interview thing. But something happened.
Was it just audio or video too?
I shot some video.
Yeah.
Again, I got in way over my head. This was a really ambitious thing to do for the first time out.
Yeah.
I don't regret doing it, but I made a lot of mistakes. I did things that I
you
wish...
you start with Anthony Michael Hall and you work your way up.
Well, I wish I had, of course, I would probably do it differently if I were to go back, but you learn. And so I went down there and I did it, and when I came back, something happened where right after I came back, that kind of contradicted a lot of the things that he had told me. And it was a big story. He was at a party where the biggest drug dealer in Colombia was arrested. And I'm like, wait a second. You're hanging out with, not just like some guy who was a narco, no, the biggest guy.
Right.
A guy who is on the list to get extradited to the U.S. Like, that's a big deal. That's
not a good look.
No, it's not a good look. And so I followed that story as it went for the next, like 7 months, 8 months, to where, I can spoil it for you if you want, but it has an interesting,
Is it on your podcast?
Yeah, the whole thing's there. It's called the Sicario Effect. And
it tells the whole story.
Tells the whole story. I'm going to do another one. I like this world of narco culture. I find it interesting.
Well, everyone does, yeah.
But I find the ones, the thing about it is they lionize these figures, and I like to think that in the Sicario Effect we didn't do that. We kind of deconstructed it and show it for what it really is. And these guys literally destroyed a country, and it's horrible. And it's
how do you when you talk to a guy like that, you detach yourself, or you just you're more concerned about the outcome?
You want to hear the weird thing? But this is also says a lot about who this guy is. It was very normal. It was very natural. It's almost like if you met him, you'd think, hey, he's a great guy. He's like funny, and he's nice, and he's engaging, and he'll answer any question I have. And that's the persona that he projects. He's very good. And you talk about a person who's excellent at grabbing a narrative and running with it. And that's what it came down to.
I just had Pete Giovanni on. We were talking about serial killers, and same with Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, he was very charming to talk to, and he's very polite. And meanwhile, they do the most heinous, horrendous things you could possibly do.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
And there's Narcos, the TV show.
Yes.
The guys Pena and I forget the other guy's name. The real detectives that it's based on.
Yeah.
One of those guys did an interview talking about this guy,
about
Popeye. That's his nickname. And they said that Popeye used to take saws to people's head, And we're talking really brutal acts. I didn't verify that, but that's according to an interview that I saw, which I think it was not Pena, but the other guy, Steve Murphy. And I saw an interview with him, and he talked about it, and I was like, wow. It's like there's a film that if you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's called The Act of a Killing, and it's the real deal. It's like it's about. In Indonesia, which is a country that I absolutely love, and I've been there like 9 times.
Yeah.
In the era of, they had this dictator for 40 years named Suharto. And in the era of Suharto, they allowed kind of these militias, if you will, to purge people. And in doing so, they made it legal, and they celebrated these guys. And he finds these guys, and he has them reenact these killings. And because they're kind of like celebrities, and during the process of filming, they kind of have this breakdown of what they did. Like it's an amazing film. It was nominated for an Oscar last year. The Act of a Killing, it's
Act of a Killing.
Really good.
I'm gonna make a pin in that.
It makes you go, holy shit! Like
wow.
yeah.
So they can listen to that podcast where?
iTunes, anywhere. You can go to the website, the Sicario Effect. You can go to SicarioEffect.com, I should say.
Where can people find you? I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter. It's Jay Brandstein, but and then also the Sicario Effect Instagram, which is the Sicario Effect. But like I like retweet stuff. I'm not like huge on Twitter. I'm not really. I enjoy reading a lot of the tweets and following stuff, but I'm not that big on it. So I don't know how exciting.
Way to promote yourself.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm just like, but you know what? I should. No.
You probably shouldn't go there at all.
No, follow me. It's exciting. You're going to hear tremendous stories and insight, and I'll be shedding all sorts of wonderful light on things.
I mean, you're interesting on this podcast, so
All right, I hope so. I don't know.
Take it to the Twitter too, world.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, tell your story,
I gotta get
Johnathan.
followers.
Follow them.
Followers, and
Damn it. Well, it was a treat to have you on, and we
Thanks,
got to do
man.
it again and talk
Yeah.
Patrice.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're a huge Patrice fan, I'm sorry we ran out of time.
Oh yeah.
It's like you remember, like when
Boy, I'm scared to look at this angle on me this whole time. It's like
I think you're fine.
Yeah.
But you remember the old late night talk shows? Our apologies to Norm Macdonald. We ran out of time. Good night. That's the same with the Patrice. We ran out
Well,
of time.
because Patrice, in all honesty, deserves.
Yeah. Of
you know,
course.
Yeah.
The guy's iconic. And
Yeah.
when for the comedy fans, we'll talk about like Tough Crowd and all that again. And when Ty Barnett just left, like he was on the show and he said he remembered him from Tough Crowd.
He remembered
so.
me. Yeah. Well, I'll next time I saved them all. I have all of my
You do?
text messages with Patrice, and some of those are. I was reading a few of them not long ago, and I was like, "My God, these are so funny."
That would be a funny podcast, reading Patrice's text messages.
Yeah. It's, I mean, some of them are not funny, and they're just like, "Oh my God." And then others are, I mean, there was a couple where he's just excoriating me, call me back. I was like, yeah.
That's funny.
But,
well, this is a treat. Thank you very
thanks,
much.
man.
Thanks for listening. Leave a 5-star review. Sit down, Zumock. That's a wrap.